what I want to talk about is ozone therapy and Lyme disease. For me, this is a personal story and effect, specifically with ozone therapy, just because of my wife and how she has suffered from chronic Lyme. Now, what I first want to start with, though, is we have to understand that Lyme disease in of itself is not just like a single condition. It's not just like an autoimmune condition or, a specific area of the body that's being affected. Almost every single Lyme patient has their own symptoms, and they manifest completely differently. My wife had neuro-Lyme, so she was dealing with, obviously, seizures and a lot of other conditions that obviously affected her system. And she couldn't walk. She was in a wheelchair. So, when I started looking at ozone therapy specifically for her, and then obviously later in my clinic with other patients, the first and foremost approach for a condition like Lyme would be something that's going to give the most systemic effect. And so utilizing IV ozone therapy was the go-to. Now, sometimes patients are in such a hard state, so dehydrated that you can't even do that. So the next part that I would go to is something like rectal insufflation, because you're going to get that systemic effect. With most Lyme patients, there can be co-infections. There can be, you can have mold toxicity, you can have parasites. Again, the body is in such a state of disbalance and, in a sense, also toxicity, that we have to have a kind of a multifactorial approach towards it. So with Lyme, what I would always look at is, what's the number one area of effectiveness? So if they're dealing with mainly gut issues, which we would start there. With her, with seizures, it was gut issues, it was head. We know that those are directly connected. But the systemic effect of IV ozone was the first and main approach, because we knew what it was going to be doing was to create a balance. My goal for her, and I've discussed this before, is to avoid any Herxheimer reaction. We know that there are microbes, there are parasites, there are these pathogens flowing throughout her body that are burrowing in. There's these spirochete bacteria that are then affecting everything else, which are pretty much undetectable by anything else. But really cool that can happen is not about trying to kill everything off, but about raising up her immune system. And that's one of the best advantages I feel ozone therapy could actually bring to her. So we started with that at very low doses, very low concentration, and we would work our way up. So on top of that, we would actually utilize ear insufflation to help. She had sensitivity within her hearing. She dealt with chronic sinus infections as well. So we would utilize those therapies at times. And then when we were at home, we would actually utilize the rectal insufflation. So we were utilizing different frequencies of dosing for her, concentrations, but it really was about helping her body to be restored. And so the immune effects of ozone therapy, helping to boost up her antioxidant levels, was one of the main reasons why we used it. For my wife, what we actually found to be most of, there's a few different things. Utilizing regenerative infusions and injections were a big thing that kind of helped to create the pivot point for her and her health. But next to that, honestly, ozone was probably the most beneficial thing, just because we could control, in a sense, again, how much we knew the effects that it was going to bring, but we also had to be careful with that, because if we moved too quickly, she would have a Herx reaction, too much die-off, too much detox. The other thing with Lyme disease is that a lot of patients with Lyme have issues with detoxification. We know that one of the effects of ozone is to actually help with detoxification. There's a lot of different pathways that work within utilizing ozone, but detoxification is a great one. We have to be able to detox, but when the body is kind of, in a sense, broken down, it's not able to do that. So the benefits that we had with her, vitamin C was good at very low doses. We tried infrared, which was difficult, but that didn't work super well. I'm going into more of like what didn't work, but at the same time, I think that honestly the most subtle treatment that we utilized was ozone for her. And sometimes when she's too dehydrated and we couldn't get an IV, and she had a port, and so we were able to access that for treatments. But if not, we would be utilizing rectal insufflation for her so that we could have that systemic effect. Going through Lyme disease, if you're watching this and you're trying to figure out things to begin to implement, I can't promise that the things that we did are going to be the same things that can help you with your Lyme disease. Or if you're a provider looking to implement something like ozone, that it's going to be the staple that's going to transform that. What I can tell you is that, number one, going through Lyme disease with the person that you love more than anything on earth, it's crushing. And, my wife and I oftentimes said that, and the way that I could visually describe it is that Lyme disease feels like you are crawling through a desert and you have no water, you see no life, and you're also going uphill, and it feels like somebody is throwing rocks at you, and there are boulders that are constantly coming at you, but you have to get up to get to the other side, and it sucks. And I hate that people have to suffer and to go through so many doctors and so many modalities, and that's the hardest thing about it, is it's this great imitator of so many different diseases. And it's so underdiagnosed and misdiagnosed, but it's crushing. It's not crushing just to the individual, but to the spouse and the people that are around you. Because somebody with Lyme disease, they want to be better, but it's so hard to figure out what is the thing. And I talk all the time about it's never a single thing. It's not just one therapy or one modality. It takes a team of modalities. It takes a team of individuals to help figure this stuff out. But the emotional response of Lyme disease it's a hard one, because you see somebody that's suffering that you love, and you see families that are torn apart by this. I know families that have lost loved ones because of Lyme disease, and you wish that there were other things that you could do for them. And sometimes you feel like you're screaming as loud as you can, just try this, or just try that. And sometimes they listen and sometimes they don't. But I can tell you that it's a struggle. And, for those that have gone through it or that are going through it, I just say stick with something. Just because it doesn't work immediately doesn't mean that it's not going to work on any modality that you're going to utilize. Anything that you have come up, don't just stop. I think in the healing journey with Lyme disease, that it takes an endurance that you need to keep pushing through, because it could be that next treatment. And that's what we found. My wife and I would look at each other when we would go to the next treatment. And as much as you want to say that you have hope, there were so many times where this isn't going to work. I remember her looking me in the eyes telling me this isn't going to work. But sometimes we have to have those that are around us that are the hope for us, that they're carrying the burden of the hope. And so as much of the struggle it is, surround yourself with those that want to help direct you and help lead you, not tell you what to do, because that's another hard one, is that you always get people that are like, oh, you should do this. Oh, this is the answer. This is the key. This is the thing. And that's not always helpful. We have to make those decisions for ourselves. You have to make decisions for yourself. But I can tell you that a staple and a foundation for what we have done and what we've utilized, and that has helped us on our journey as a foundation to help with her immune system, to keep her body stronger, are everything from infusions, IV therapy, rectal insufflation with ozone, and vitamin C has been a big one as well. Obviously utilizing structural tissue products with intravenous use has been a massive one. But if I ramble through any of this when it comes to Lyme disease, it's because there's a lot of emotions that go on and a lot of things that happen here, and especially also with children. It's been hard, and I know it's hard for them too, but I will tell you, just never give up and always keep pushing, because sometimes that transformation and that hope is just right around the corner.